was pretty.
Thank you.
Well, this is Flat Lake Baptist Church 2023. We are talking to Pastor Josh Tomlin, just trying to get to know him a little bit better and maybe get to know some of our congregation better as these interviews proceed. But I just had a few questions for Josh and thought we might just, like I said, get to know him a little bit better. So the question I had for you is, tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe your testimony there.
Yeah. So I was raised in a Christian home, grew up around Houstonville, Kentucky and Lincoln County. Blessed with wonderful godly parents, a sister who's older than me that was very musically talented, and that kind of was a big influence. Music was a big thing growing up. And I went to church my whole life, whether I wanted to or not, I was there. And had heard the gospel message preached for a long time, and it was one of those cases where I knew about living right, I knew about good morals, but it took me a while to figure out what grace was really about.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember kneeling in prayer and finally realizing that I couldn't do it on my own, and asking the Lord to forgive me my sins and to save me. And ever since then, I have been making it a deliberate effort to tell others, not to keep it to myself.
Absolutely. That's nice. So regarding the Baptist doctrine, Josh, what do you believe?
I believe that there's only one way to heaven, that right. Jesus is the only begotten Son of God, as the Bible tells us, and by that it's only through the sacrifice on the cross that he made, that he paved the way for us to accept that gift of grace, that to go to heaven, the only thing required is that salvation, that belief on Jesus. But with that, I think it comes with a responsibility that we do tell others that we live a life that's pleasing to him, and most of all, we allow ourselves to be led by his Spirit. And in doing that, we realize that the Bible is the ultimate infallible authority, the ultimate Word of God. And anything that we do in our lives should ultimately agree with it.
Absolutely. What about baptism?
Yeah, baptism is a very important outward representation of the change that's happened inwardly.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a requirement to be saved, but if you are a Christian, it's something that we are supposed to do. It's something that is played out from the earliest days of the early church in the book of Acts, when the Jews looked at Peter after he'd preached to them and said, "What shall we do?" He told them what they needed to do to be saved, and he commanded them to be baptized because he knew that it was important to be a representation of, the old man being buried, being risen again in new life with Christ. And it's important, that immersion baptism to the faith.
Absolutely. And what about the Lord's Supper?
That's something also that was commanded. Even, we find not just the representation we have of the Last Supper that Jesus kind of laid out for us, the idea of being reminded of his sacrifice, and the bread representing the body, and the wine representing the blood. But you get a representation as well. Paul talked about it, the importance of it and what it means to us, that it's something we're supposed to take time to reflect and kind of take inventory of our hearts, really see where we are in our relationship, and be reminded of the sacrifice that Jesus made on the cross.
Absolutely. So Josh, you're the youngest pastor in the history of our church, that church being the oldest church in the county. That's quite a dynamic there. What's your perspective there?
It is. Yeah, well, 1799, so when the church was founded, which makes 225 years coming up in 2024, I think it is, there's a wonderful history room downstairs at the church for those that aren't aware, and my first Sunday here was taken down there, and there's pictures of all these former pastors going back well over 100 years, almost 200 years. There are pictures and things down there. And I remember the first thought I had was, what a legacy of the gospel. I'll never know all of those men's stories. I'll never know everything about them. But I can see the evidence of their work, the faithful congregation that is here, the fact that the word is still being proclaimed here. And I'm reminded that young or old, we all have a job to do. We all have a calling. And we don't necessarily get a choice in when that calling comes to us or what it is. God has that plan for each and every one of us. And so as a part of that, I answered the calling at a young age, 15 years old, made it known publicly. And since then, I've endeavored to learn from those older than me, those more experienced, those wiser than me. And I've endeavored to take that knowledge, along with what the Lord has taught me through personal study, and share it with everybody I come in contact with.
So Josh, what are your goals for Flat Lake as a church?
I would like to see the church grow. And when I say church grow, numbers is part of that, but we know that numbers is not everything. Certainly I'd love to see the place filled to the brim. I'd love to see that happen. But also I want to see the people grow. People answering callings, people rededicating their lives, people getting saved, people choosing to live their lives in such a way that we start to see the effects, not as much within these four walls, but also outside them. That people realize, that community around that church, those are good people. There's changes in hearts happening there. So I'd like to see that growth happen.
So Josh, you mentioned music earlier. You're obviously in a band. So you want to tell us a bit about your band, the music that they play, and also music here in church?
Yeah.
Let's talk about music.
So I have traveled now. I've been on the road in some capacity, traveling and singing and playing music since I was about 14 years old. For the last 7 years, that's been with a band called Cumberland Thunder. We travel around and play and sing and love what we do. I think music is a God-given gift. The fact that notes exist and harmony exists, that's not something that man could come up with. We've assigned names to it, but it's all God's creation. And so I think it's impactful because it hits us on an emotional level, but even deeper than that, it hits us on a spiritual level. So music, whether it be in kind of a more concert setting or whether it be in a church service setting, just like on a typical Sunday morning here, I've always thought that music has a threefold purpose. The first is to, first and foremost, worship, bring praise and glory to God. We're pointing back to Him, we're thankful to Him, we're praising Him. Second is that it should bring encouragement to those of us that are Christians. We can all relate to a time when we heard a song that said exactly what we needed in that moment, and it lifted our spirits up, it encouraged us. And third is it's another way to bring the gospel message to the lost. It can bring conviction. I've certainly heard a song that kind of caused me to stop and think. Maybe it did encourage me, but at the same time it caused me to think about, maybe this choice I've made is wrong, or maybe this is something that I need to look at in life. And so that threefold purpose is ultimately, I think, the purpose of the music that God has given us.
So Josh, your wife is Abby, wonderful young lady that all of us here just love to pieces. Tell us a little bit about Abby.
So I first met Abby, I guess that would be over 12 years ago now, 13 years ago, over that, and was friends with her family. Actually was friends with her dad before I ever knew that she existed. And so when we started dating, I was already on his good side. And her family, along with being a musical family, she's a pastor's granddaughter and a preacher's daughter. And so ministry is very much in her heart as much as it is in mine. She is honestly the sweetest, most compassionate person that I have ever had the fortune of meeting. And the fact that she said yes to me will continue to boggle my mind for all of eternity. But I'm glad that she did. And she is united in the mission with me here to see ministry happen. Absolutely.
So, Josh, my last question involves obviously the church here. We've heard about all the stuff that you've said that you want to see the church accomplish and all the stuff that you can do for the church. At this point, what can the church do for you to help you out,
So, I think biblically the most important, well, there's a few things that the church can do. There's an old song that we used to sing in Sunday school that says, "Brighten the corner where you are." And a lot of people have questions about, what's my calling? What am I supposed to be doing? Mm-hmm. And some of us are called to do things somewhere else, somewhere far away. Some of us are called to do things, in other countries or whatever it might be. But really, wherever we are at that point in time, it's our job to try to make our little corner, our little piece, whatever, our family, our home, our workplace, our school, our pew, it's our job to make that a little bit brighter because of Christ's light in our lives. And so when each person individually begins to do that, and that comes from Bible reading, daily study, prayer, each person developing their own personal relationship with the Lord and growing that and realizing that it's not just a Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night thing. I think that's when we'll see real change start to happen. And for me, that's the most encouraging thing for me to say, or for me to see, because it lets me know that, the messages that I preach are taking root. It lets me know that growth is happening in people's hearts and minds. It lets me know that the work I'm doing is helping someone. When I see that happen, and then once that happens, it's a little bit like when something catches on fire. You don't have to advertise the fire. People are going to come because they see smoke and they see fire. When you have a church that is on fire, growing spiritually for the Lord, you're going to have to advertise it less and less and less the more that grows, because people are just naturally sharing it. They're seeing changed lives, and that's the biggest encouragement to me, is to witness that growth. Thank yous are nice, accolades are nice, but the Bible tells us that those that receive those on earth have their reward. And so with that thought in mind, my intention is never to put something out there hoping for a pat on the back. It's nice, it feels good, it's appreciated, but when I see you having a conversation or sharing the gospel with somebody or showing Christ's love in some way, that's the biggest thanks and biggest encouragement that I could ever see.
Absolutely. Well, Josh, I'm glad you took this time out of your day to let us get to know you a little bit better. Last thing, invite everybody to church here. Yeah, absolutely. Come out to Flat Lake Baptist Church. We would be so happy to see you. We are at 133 Flat Lake Road, Somerset, Kentucky. Beautiful, beautiful country around here. We'll treat you so many ways, you'll have to like one of them. No, this is honestly, I've been to a lot of churches, the most loving congregation that I've ever come across, and I'm delighted to be their pastor, and I'd be delighted to see you come visit us. We have Sunday morning service at 11 a.m., Sunday school before that at 10 o'clock, and then Sunday evenings, 6 p.m., Wednesday night Bible study prayer meeting, 7 p.m. We would love to see you here. Once again, this has been Josh Tomlin of Flat Lake Baptist Church. Thank you, brother.
Thanks.